A quick thank you to Handmade, a local band here who's just released their debut EP called For You. It's on, I believe, all streaming services. They allowed us initial access, pre-release, for their amazing song On and On, which you hear before and through the podcast. If you do get a chance to check them out, Handmade, not the Thai boy band, just check them out. Give them a follow on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you might be able to search and find them. Thanks again to Handmade for an awesome track for us. Welcome to Perspectives YYC. In this episode, I sit down with Jacquôt Marshall, an amazing human who was running the Mission coffee shop that I call affectionately my home office. Unfortunately, or fortunately for him, unfortunately for me, he's moved on to bigger and better things. But in this episode, we get to sit down, learn about his near-death experiences, his obsession with mountaineering, his fascination and involvement with coffee, and just a small snippet of what an awesome human being Jacquôt is. I have to start pronouncing his name correctly from here on in. If you do get a chance to pause and give us a rating, a review, subscribe to the podcast, that'd be great. We love those metrics. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy my little chat here, and thanks for listening. Apples a genetically modified thing from figs? No, there's something.
Really?
No, it wasn't. Maybe it's not apples.
I think apples are apples.
Apples may just be apple.
Yeah.
Well, because the original Eden story is not actually an apple.
It's a pear.
Yeah. I mean, everything we eat is essentially genetically modified. I mean, dogs.
Dogs are very genetically modified.
There's like
the most genetically
one
modified.
dog that starts all dogs.
Yeah.
Which is hard to
One dog to rule them all.
Yeah. Yeah. And like all these like power breeds are all dying right now from inbreeding. Some of the pictures you see are depressing.
The evolution of some of these dogs from even 100 years ago. It's like the English Bull Terrier or something. It's the one that Don Cherry had.
Oh,
He was also the Budweiser dog. Spuds McKenzie, I think was his name.
Yeah.
It's got that long, like it goes from head to nose.
Yeah.
And you can see photos of it 100 years ago. It's a completely different looking dog. It actually has a bridge, like a spot for its eyes.
Yeah, whatever
like
the dog.
It's pretty crazy.
The dog description of that portion of the face.
Yeah.
And not quite the muzzle.
Yeah.
The are we already recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Great.
fun.
Okay.
We're just gonna shoot the shit.
Here we are.
Okay. Well, welcome to Perspectives YYC. We're in a new recording environment, a room, and we're here with my friend Jacquôt and Kyle, as always, my sponsor. My benefactor and the man behind Media Lab YYC. I wrote a jingle this week.
I like it. It's really smart.
Here at Media Lab YYC, we help you share your stories with the public. Video, audio, business, personal. Let us help you take your idea to the finish line.
That's great.
That's like mostly from Kyle.
That's really good, Kyle. Yeah.
I know, we'll work on it.
Yeah.
It's plastic, whatever the right term is. But okay.
It's a live statement. It's a living statement.
It's a living statement.
Yeah, that's
There's
right.
something that it'll evolve.
That's right.
As we do.
I like it.
Today, my special guest is Jacquôt Marshall. Let's pronounce it correctly.
It's Jacquôt.
Jacquôt.
Yeah, Marshall. You got it.
Jacquôt is an interesting fella in the sense, I mean, beyond being an actually interesting fella, but I describe you a lot in my story because I think connecting with you first on my journey to try to humanize human beings, you're also a benefactor of mine because you were, which is an interesting twist to the story today, the manager of the Phil and Sebastian at Mission, which is essentially my office.
That's right.
And then everything that's come out of my current iteration of a maybe career or life goal has stemmed out of Mission Cafe Phil and Sebastian.
Oh, that's great.
Isn't it weird?
We're happy to help. Yeah, it's great though. It's really awesome.
So maybe, as usual, what we've been doing is asking you to maybe introduce yourself and talk about
Okay.
Whatever you want to talk about, I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Jacquôt Marshall. I have a very French name and a very non-French last name. It's a funny juxtaposition, but there it is. Yeah. So I've been the manager at Phil and Sebastian in Mission for the last 5.5 years, and I've been with the company for 8.5 years, and I've just stepped down. So it's an interesting time in my life. So that's something that I'm just figuring out what's next. And then I'm also a very avid mountaineer and rock climber. So those are kind of coffee and mountains are my two big passions for the most part. So when I'm not in a coffee shop, I get out to the mountains as much as I can, assuming I have somebody to go with, because going by yourself sucks.
Sounds dangerous.
It's dangerous and it's lonely. Sometimes even with people, frequently with people, it's still dangerous and lonely, but that's part of the fun, I think.
It's hard to date these things because it takes some production time, etc. But stepping down, you're stepping down.
I'm fully stepping down. Well, I officially stepped down on September 15th.
From duty,
from managerial duties to assistant manager, which only yesterday I actually started to feel like I wasn't the manager anymore because people stopped bothering me as much and giving me so much grief. I didn't expect to change careers so fast, but I was approached by these two people who own the Commons YYC, which is a shared workspace, another one, and they approached me and said that they would love me to work with them, and they didn't know how or what the job would be, but they wanted to see if there was a space for me in the company. So, it's kind of turned into something after several talks with them over the last few weeks and a rather extensive interview process for me, at least. It's also a living role. The job description is a live living document. And basically what the title is Community and Operations Director, which sounds really awesome.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. So
Kyle, we should be directors or something.
Yeah. It feels good to direct, you know? So they know that I love people and I have a passion for community and making connections. So they wanted to get me in to do that in their space. Because why do people come to a shared working space? Why, what are their reasons? And, is it because it has lightning fast internet and good coffee and this place has nitro cold brew and tea on tap? That's pretty cool. Those are your, amenities, if you will. Your value propositions is what we call them. Or is it because of the culture? Is it because they are looking for a place to connect with other entrepreneurs, like-minded people? It can be both or one or the other. Or they just don't want to sit in their own house. But what's the reason, So that's what I'm there to find out. So I'm going to connect with all these members and start to kind of get into what they're all about and how we can make that space better. There's a lot of co-working spaces in this city now, and what makes us special. So I'm there to find out. I'm there to make those connections with people and make sure that you're not just walking in and not saying hi to anybody and going to your own desk. If anything, I want to at least be the person they say hi to.
It's interesting hearing you talk. Number one, I think next time you're on here, we'll get the Commons to pay for it. It's like a nice advertorial.
I guess it depends on what I say now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. No, you just hyped up the Commons. Great. I want to go visit. The other thing is, before I came here, this morning, again, this won't work sequentially as far as the release of these podcasts, but this morning, Kyle and I recorded a podcast with Alex Kwong. And then afterwards, I met with a chef who has been doing pop-up restaurant sort of meals.
Cool.
Had a great conversation with him. But one of the things that he was lamenting was finding difficulty finding a common space that was more what you're describing. There's maybe a spiritual or a cultural drive as opposed to an economic or business oriented one. And it's difficult. And, one of the bigger themes that's been coming out amongst all of these podcasts is how difficult it is with the financial realities of starting anything in Canada in general. Never mind Calgary.
Sure.
But managing living costs, rent costs, commercial renting costs, all that shit, I've met two people in the last 24 hours that are on intermittent fasting diets, trying to get over the idea that we have to have a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner, and then becoming enslaved to this rhythm. All of this stuff is evolving.
It's very, very much so. Even our eating habits. Yeah. Well, always our eating habits, I guess. But,
that's fair.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it?
How about this? Let's talk about your journey in and through coffee, in and through mountaineering.
I love it.
And in and through just being a sociable, nice guy.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of it'll start with my discovery of customer service. I think I used to work at Boston Pizza for a really long time. I was just the kitchen manager there. I was, maybe 21 through 23 or 20, whatever. I was in my early 20s, working in a pizza kitchen, bossing 16-year-olds around and not having a great time of it. And I like the aspect of creating food and of cooking because even Boston Pizza, because I like to create. I like to work with my hands. I like to be on my feet. Aside from a few brief moments in the last 15 years, I've worked on my feet every day, or at least 5 days a week for, 40 hours a week. And I like it. So I think the big problem for me was that I was creating, but I wasn't seeing the results of my creations. That's kind of what led me into coffee. I was working at Boston Pizza. I ran into somebody who was managing a Good Earth cafe. I don't know why he was managing a cafe and working at Boston Pizza, because managing a cafe is hard work. He offered me a job. So I started working in coffee. I'd never made coffee before. And I decided to go check it out. And I really enjoyed speaking with customers. I really enjoyed making those connections. And I still got to create. I still got to work with coffee. I still got to make something and hand it out. And you're done. You say, thank you so much, really appreciate it. And if it's wrong, you're not ruining a steak. You're not ruining, something that's going to take 15 more minutes to prepare and the customer's going to be pissed because everybody's food is cold. It's a coffee. It takes 2 minutes, and you can bump them up to the front of the line. It doesn't matter. And I really enjoyed that. I'm a bit of an instant gratification oriented individual in some ways. Other ways I like to play the long game, but that was one of the easy ones. That was all well and good. I worked at the Good Earth Cafe in Glenmore Landing in Southwest Calgary. I had an okay time. I wasn't a huge fan of my clientele. I like people in general, but some of those people were really irking me. And then I had a buddy who said, hey, I'm working for this company called Phil and Sebastian. And I'd never heard of them, And coffee for me was kind of funny because when you start learning about coffee from a certain company, you feel like you know everything about coffee, because they are educating you in their fashion. So when I was working at Good Earth, I was like, I know how coffee works. I know coffee for sure. And it wasn't until I started at Phil and Sebastian that I was like, I don't know anything about coffee. There were so many aspects of coffee that we hadn't even touched. I didn't know existed. But what I loved was not only the ability to learn so much more, but also the customers, and the community were phenomenal. Just leaps and bounds better than, or different, I guess, from the ones in Glenmore Landing, And I think it's because people were coming to Phil and Sebastian because they were discerning enough to want quality in their coffee. It was more than just, I need caffeination. It was, I need caffeination and I want it to be good, and I'm not just here to get a orange mocha frappuccino. I'm here to get something delicious and real. And that started my long journey to work with Phil and Sebastian at the time, these two young owners. They were in their early 30s at the time. They're both like 41 now. And it was really cool to have these guys so passionate about what they do and really discerning, very detail oriented, almost, for me at the time, I was like, this is too much, like almost to a fault for me. But they're engineers. They're both ex-engineers. So they really had to get into the minutia. But with that came my love for creating that thing. And also I was really proud of what I was giving to these customers. It also made me realize that customer service is just something I really love. I love connecting. I love to offer somebody something I've made and see the reaction, but also get that feedback and see them again and work with them to realize that there's, like, how was it last time? Not so great. Okay, let's work together to make this better. I think that's so fun. And I get to see them every day. I get to see their children grow up. I get to see them get married, all this kind of stuff. Move away, some of them, which is so sad, But I have dinner in some of my regular customers' houses, many times a year, which is really cool. So
yeah, we're gonna miss that without you. Now that you're describing it, I realize that that's a fundamental characteristic of why I think Mission Cafe has become my home, my second home away from home, is that, I did go on a journey to start my journey to go and meet and humanize and you're not just this automaton that's, I pay for my caffeination, which I had assumed probably for the first 38 years of my life. And then, meeting with you and chatting with you and the team at the time, even someone like Dallas or Nick, it doesn't really matter who it was, Sam, all these guys, Mitch, and as soon as you just start a conversation, and you find out what people are doing, etc. And then they engage with you, and then it becomes a conversation.
It's a relationship. Yeah.
I mean, Ellen is an archaeologist.
Yeah,
it's
wild,
fascinating. You know, people don't think about people who make coffee as human beings that have other interests.
I mean, we think about that of our customers a lot of the time too, though. You know, they walk in and they're just a customer. And then when I start learning, like, oh, this is cool. Like Dave's a photographer. We get some amazing people. We have Fred, giant beard, super tall, awkward, owns 2 turtles. He's a spinal surgeon, and he's this young guy. Like, I think he's in his mid-30s. He's hilarious. You know Ben Stein. You remember Ben, like, Bueller?
Maybe.
Bueller, like from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And he had a game show. He's on all sorts of, commercials and shit. He's got this really monotone voice. And this is what Fred sounds like. He's like, can I get a cappuccino, please? But he's actually a super interesting dude. He's really, besides the fact that he's a spinal surgeon, no big deal. But he loves kind of hip hop fashion, and he's really interested in coffee, and, he loves to travel, and, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, but my hope now, it's a fear, but I hope that Mission Cafe will have someone take up the mantle. The last thing we need to are people that don't buy into that.
Sure.
Yeah. But and it has nothing to do with you or Phil or Sebastian or anything. It's just the way that these things evolve. But I'm beginning to understand, like even today when I was at the coffee shop before I came here this morning, and one of the regulars and you were talking about, remember 2 shots of espresso versus 1 and 1 decaf.
Sure.
Like, keep the flavor, lower the caffeination. That's not a conversation you hear at a coffee shop typically.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think we do encourage that with our staff though. So I hope that stays alive, because I guess one of the things I didn't mention before, but we've always been encouraged to really make that connection. In other places I've worked, it's like, hey, stop talking. Like get back to work. We got work to do. Talking with our customers is our work. I will rarely pull an employee aside for talking to a customer because they're important. It's so important. If I'm like really busy and you're on the other side of the cafe and I'm like, I really need your help. Like,
right. We're still a team.
Time and a place. Yeah. But ultimately, like if you have time to talk to a customer, do it.
Yeah. I love chatting earlier. Well, not your anymore, but the staff that will be at Mission Cafe. And it's fun. It's fun just being able to walk in and wave at people and know like, oh yeah, Ben just had a kid and Sam just had a kid and whatever it is, it's fascinating to get involved. And then should you want to learn about coffee, people at Phil and Sebastian can teach you about coffee.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not only friendly, but also knowledgeable.
Yeah. The strict testing to get on the...
Yeah, it is quite strict. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's called the bar test. It has nothing to do with a legal degree, but you have to be able to, it's kind of evolved over the years since I took it. I took it back in 2010 and it was quite different, but basically now, there's up to 6 months of training before a staff member takes their test. And during the test, you have to create, I think it's 12 drinks for this group of judges. There's 3 judges that are tasting the coffee. And then there's a judge that is checking basically everything, every movement you make. So you can't waste any coffee, and your milk has to be the right temperature. And you have to have done enough tweaking to the grinder in the machine to make the coffee taste just right. We call it dialing it in. All of that has to be perfect. And then you have to serve this coffee, like these multiple beverages to these judges. And you also the whole time have to talk to these people. They're asking you questions and you have to explain to them. They might say, tell me about coffee processing. And then you have to tell them about coffee processing.
While working.
While that's all happening. Because that's a real life scenario. I talk to you the whole time while I'm making drinks, and it's just part of my job.
Yep.
So they want to know that you can do that. And all of the training up to then is like, this is the culmination. And then finally you're allowed to go into an actual cafe and pull espresso shots. But the good thing about that is that it really instills a pride in our employees. Like some people get kind of miffed that it's taking them a long time to get to that level, but once they get there, everybody kind of like welcomes them with open arms, like, hey, you passed your bar test. This is great. Congratulations. So I think it's great.
The idea of standards, discipline, training, work culture is fascinating. I'm inherently attracted to Phil and Sebastian. I don't know why. Probably Toronto snobbery when we first moved here. I'm not really sure. And then Mission opened after we had moved into the city. So initially, I think we'd been going to Marda Loop maybe Chinook, who knows?
Yeah.
It feels like 2 lifetimes ago now. I feel that, whether it was anybody that was able to pull a shot, you're right. There's something more.
We hope that they do it with pride, not too much pride, but we want them to be knowledgeable. We want them to know that they are valued and know that they've worked for something. In this day and age, it's hard to financially value them, but at least we want them to know that we've put our time and our energy into them to do this kind of stuff. So
one of the things I wanted to overcome with this concept of art is, like, for example, pulling a shot at Phil and Sebastian is an artisanal, is a structured, is a learned, is a honed skill. And so it's fascinating. Like hearing someone on the bar saying, it was good an hour ago. We'll have to make sure we dial it in. Like that's not what you'll hear at many other.
Of course not. No. Yeah.
Wow. So it gives you a reflection. You're taking part of something that's kind of unique.
Yeah. It's an ever evolving thing, espresso, if you're really paying attention to it, and it changes throughout the day. And it relies really heavily, beyond it being a skill, like you said, it also relies very heavily on your palate, which is really cool. It's not just a series of movements, but also a series of tasting and of sensory movements, if you will. And that's what's really neat to me, because you can teach somebody how to put the thing under the portafilter under the grinder and grind the coffee and distribute it properly and tamp it really straight and put it in the machine. But you can do all those things and still make a really awful cup of coffee because you haven't tasted it and really made sure everything's just right.
It's not just mechanical.
It's just exactly. Not just mechanical. Yeah. So, it's really cool. I think it's a lot of fun. And I'm going to miss that for sure. But for me, it's never been about the coffee itself. It's always been about the connection and the sharing of the knowledge of coffee. Because it's something I've been educated in, I love to talk about it.
Yeah, we had a great moment. Yeah. It was yesterday we ordered the geisha. You really turned on in that discussion. Thanks for listening so far. We just wanted to say that this podcast has been brought to you by Media Lab YYC. Kyle Marshall runs this amazing little outfit here in downtown Calgary. And we wanted to say this. Here at Media Lab YYC, we help you share your stories with the public. Video, audio, business, personal. Let us help you take your idea to the finish line. Just in case we run out of time, let's switch the gear a little bit and talk about mountains.
Okay, great. Okay, we can start from the beginning here. This is a heavy story. Are you ready? Okay, so I went to boarding school when I was 15 for 1 year. St. John's School of Alberta. It was an Anglican boarding school. I am the farthest from Anglican you would ever hear. I was raised in a Japanese religion. We can talk about that another time. But the reason I went to this boarding school is because, one, there's very few boarding schools in Alberta. And two, I had some friends who had gone there and they raved about it. I actually asked to go to this boarding school. I was not sent to boarding school. So I begged to go to this school because it's a really outdoor oriented school. These guys have their own dog kennels. They do dog sledding. They do 50-kilometer snowshoe races. They go on a month-long canoe trip at the end of every year.
Holy shit.
You actually go to school every Saturday morning for the whole year to offset the extra month you're taking off.
Portaging and doing all this crazy stuff.
Up in the Northwest Territories. They go for 30 days. Huge. So I started in grade 10 and, it was very expensive. My parents are not wealthy. They took out a second mortgage just to send me to boarding school. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Anyway, so we arrived and we have all our gear and everything. And they said, okay, welcome. You're going on the New Boy hike. So depending on what year you start in, the school goes from 7 to 12. And depending on what year you start in, it governs how big your hike is. So because I was starting in grade 10, I was going 8 days and 120 kilometers.
Oh my God. Big
hike. So we got started, and we didn't know that this hike was happening. That's the one thing they don't tell you. I think because I don't know, you show up and they're like, hey, tomorrow we're leaving on this big epic.
This is faculty, not hazing.
That's right. Yeah. And at the time I was not into mountains. I was not very active. I'm still not great at most sports. I didn't have that kind of body awareness or athleticism. So we started hiking and I started feeling pretty gross. On day 3, I started to experience some physical discomfort that escalated worse and worse and worse. And I actually ended up getting a staph infection, which is bad news. And nobody believed me because they thought I was just a whiny, chubby kid. I wasn't even sure if anything was wrong with me or not, if I just couldn't cope. the long story short is I ended up collapsing on the last day and I had to be carried out. And I was taken to the hospital, and this boarding school was up by Stony Plain. It doesn't exist anymore. Stony Plain still exists, but the boarding school doesn't. So up close to Edmonton, and I went into this little hospital that they took me to, and the doctor said, like, something is really wrong with this kid. This kid is in trouble.
Holy shit.
So I was transported to the university hospital, and it took them 4 days to figure out I had a staph infection because they'd never seen staph do that before. So this bacteria often infects one cut or one joint or something, but I had it all over my body. I had it in both my feet, both my knees, my knuckles, my shoulders, and my lungs. I was in trouble.
What the hell?
My body was in sepsis. I was shutting down. I also had a very bad kidney infection. That's what the doctor noticed first. He was like, okay, whatever else is wrong with this kid, he's got a really bad kidney infection. Let's go. So it's just the last thing they checked for because they were like, how could it possibly be this? Yeah, it was really bad. I had to get 8 surgeries on my knees and my feet because that's where the infection was the worst, to drain them out. And my feet had actually broken from the swelling of my feet in my boots. It was crazy. That sucked a lot. The experience was very traumatic, not only the pain and the anguish, but also, not knowing if, them not believing me. And also because I'm sure they had a lot of whiny fat kids on this kind of thing, but also me not knowing. So, I was in the hospital for 3 months. I was on a continual motion machine so that my knees and my feet were always moving because the fluid from the infection would fill the joints and then harden.
Oh my God.
It was very painful. It sucked. It was very traumatic. It took me a long time and a little bit of therapy to get over some of that trauma. And so I wanted nothing to do with the wilderness for a very long time. The smell of pine and spruce actually made me feel really gross.
Some PTSD.
Yeah, of course. And smell is apparently the strongest sense that's tied to memory. And you smell something, you're just like, oh my God, mom's baking, whatever it was. So it really kind of messed me up. And I don't know. I kind of just stayed away from the mountains. I didn't want anything to do with it. I'd grown up with a really outdoorsy mother, but just like shunned all of it. I was like, screw the mountains. And then, I started gaining a lot of weight. I just felt really shitty about life. And at the age of like 24, I was 300 pounds and pretty unhappy with my life.
You can't see it, but
yeah, thank you.
Jacquôt is not 300
not
pounds
300
anymore.
pounds.
No.
And so I finally decided I wanted to do something about it. And so that started with a lot of gym exercises and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, hey, I want to go on a hike, so I want to do this, and I just want to give it a shot and see if I can do this. So we went and did Mount Yamnuska, which is one of the first mountains on the north side of the Bow Valley when you're coming into the Rocky Mountains close to Canmore. And we went and did Mount Yamnuska, and I loved it. I had a great time. And that was the first like real mountain I'd ever climbed. And it's a doozy. We went for a good one too. But I had a great time. And that was the beginning of my love for mountains, And from there, I just started hiking as much as I could. It was a lot of smaller mountains to begin with. And then I think when you start doing something you love, you fall in with people who are like-minded. And then I found a really cool group of guys that were all kind of at the same hiking level as I was. We started getting to more scrambling and difficult scrambling, and then rock climbing. And now we do full-on mountaineering. So now we've got boots with spikes on them. We've got ropes. We've got ice picks and ice axes, and we get out on some really big mountains now. And I love it.
The pictures you show me throughout the year are nuts.
Yeah.
You go up. It's not an exaggeration.
We definitely do some big mountains now, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
The reason I brought it up, other than the fact that it's really cool and it's an amazing story, is you almost died this year several times. Yeah. So I don't know if it's painful to relive.
No. Those are fine. It's it kind of goes with the territory a little bit. You, in any part in your life, you're bound to make some mistakes once in a while. And unfortunately, when you make a mistake on a glacier or on a big snow slope, it's a little bit more dire. If you stub your toe walking down the street, or you step on your shoelace or whatever, you skin a knee, your life is okay. But when you're on a mountain, if you slip in the wrong spot, it can be really dangerous. So I had a few close calls this year, and a lot of that is a result of cockiness and some inexperience still. So yeah, one was on the way up Mount Victoria, that we were trying to do the north summit of Mount Victoria. And we were crossing this glacier, and we had to get over something called a Bergschrund, which is kind of the toe of a glacier, or the it's sometimes where the glacier changes from horizontal to more vertical, and there's a big crevasse in that spot. It's a deep fissure in the glacier, and so we had to get over this thing, and so we got over it. But now we were on some pretty steep terrain, and we were trying to gain this summit ridge. We got on some really crappy rock with just a very thin layer of snow covering it, and under that snow is something called verglas. And verglas is when wet rock gets icy, it has a really thin kind of clear layer of ice over it, and it's deadly. It's deadly because
Zero friction.
Zero friction.
Negative
and there's a
friction.
little bit of snow on top of it. So sometimes you think that the traction is going to be great, and it's not. So I knew where I wanted to be, but this stuff was in front of me, and I think I was just like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. And that was a big mistake. So I started climbing up it, and I started sliding down, and I was roped up with my partner, and below us was this Bergschrund, was this crevasse. So we were kind of freaking out, and I took a slip, and I started sliding on my stomach. I was kind of ice picking my way up this steep rock cliff, if you will, and I started sliding, and I was so I wasn't even I basically self-arrested. I was able to kind of get my weight on top of my ice axe, and it thankfully just grabbed a little something, and my hand actually slipped off my ice axe, and thankfully I had my ice axe attached to my harness at the time as well. And it was actually the little piece of rope that attached my ice axe to my harness that stopped me. So I don't know if it would have been fatal, but I would have been really hurt. We would have slid down a snow slope and possibly into a crevasse. So it would have sucked, We might have been able to self-arrest on the snow slope. The distance wasn't great, but the consequences would have been really high. So that was scary. So we turned around that day. We were like, yeah, we're good. We're fine. But, it's really like, what lesson do you learn from that? And it's really think about your surroundings. Think about what you're doing. Don't stop doing what you're doing, but just really look at it from an educated perspective, And some of that is unfortunately learning what you can and can't do.
By error.
The stakes are higher. That was the first time. And then more recently on, I guess it was August long weekend, we were doing another 2 mountains with a big glacier in the middle of it. And we had to go up these 2 snow covered gullies. It's called a couloir. And in a heavier snowfall time, that would be an avalanche chute or an avalanche gully. But, when we were there, there's not enough snow around there to really be a gully, but there's always snow there. So we went up these 2 couloirs to gain this upper glacier. The first couloir in the morning was quite shallow, maybe a 45-degree angle, and it was nice and wide, and it didn't require any sort of ice climbing techniques. We kind of just walked up it like a staircase. The second couloir was very steep. We had to really use our 2 ice picks and pull ourselves up and kick steps and get up this. And we were really worried about getting down that steep one. We went and did the 2 mountains. We were coming down that. It took us, what took us 20 minutes to get up, took us an hour and a half to get down on the steep one. So after that, we were like, oh, we got it made. I got cocky again. I said yeah, no problem. I can see the tents way down there. They're about 2 or 3 kilometers away. We just have to go down this shallow couloir. Life is good. So, but it was 4:00 in the afternoon. The sun had been beating down on that snow all day. And I started really nonchalantly walking down this second couloir, and my feet gave out underneath me. So I ended up sliding for a pretty big distance before I was able to self-arrest. And in the process, I nearly broke my nose. I had a big gash across my face from my ice axe hitting me in the face, and I broke a rib. And it was very painful.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, healed very well.
I have a little scar now, but I'm happy with it. And I didn't lose an eye.
It was fucking jarring when I came in on whatever Monday or Tuesday. Yeah. I'm like, Jacquôt.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah.
It's cool.
I almost
don't worry
again.
about it. No, it's fine.
You went to work. It's insane.
Yeah, well, sure. You got it. The rib took a lot longer to heal. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I've never experienced a broken rib. Oh my God.
Broken ribs suck.
It's unreal.
Yeah, I broke a rib the year my wife and I finally decided to get married, our 10th anniversary in a soccer game. And we did our honeymoon with a broken rib. And that's a weird restriction.
Oh, you can't have any fun.
Yeah. It's just it's in everything.
And it's moving.
Yeah.
You can't stabilize it. You can't immobilize
cast.
it. No.
So you just suffer and hope it heals properly.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have to re-break it or something.
Yeah. So that really sucked. But what I did learn is like, just really err on the side of caution, buddy. You know, like you're on a big glacier, you're on a big mountain, you know, whatever happens, the smallest of things are big out there. You know, you could, if you sprain your ankle, you have to hike out sometimes 15, 16 kilometers with a sprained ankle. So if you do something worse than a sprained ankle, like it's trouble. Sometimes you don't have cell phone signal. Sometimes you don't have anything. And sometimes those helicopters take 40 or 50 hours to come to you. Just be aware, you know, that it's big. It's a big place. So, yeah, I'm just going to exercise a little more caution from now on and do all that just so that I at least know that I did my part. Ultimately, out there, a boulder could come out of a mountaintop and crush me. You know, that's just a given. And that's something that I've accepted, and I'm fine with the fact. I don't want to die, of course, but I'm fine with the fact that there are hazards beyond my control. But what are the ones in my control? And my ego is a big hazard that I can control a little more.
This is the other thing that I think we vibe on, especially after my big midlife crisis and recovery that I talk about so much. But spiritually, in terms of life philosophy, you know, you have lots of great insight for me. I think after you almost gashed your face with your ice axe, we were chatting casually, and you mentioned, I think I've brought this up either in the podcast or in casual conversation, that you mentioned how, you know, with mountain climbing, for example, on the ascent, camping out with a couple of smelly dudes here, almost dying, dealing with elements. It's not that it's innately enjoyable in its minutia, but that the entire process has some kind of value to that you would even go back, you know?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. It all sucks most of the time, you know, like it's very much a type 2 fun in that you think about it after and you're like, oh, that was really fun. At the time you're working really hard. You're suffering a little bit. But there's a camaraderie that is bred from suffering with your fellows, you know, with your community. When you go through hardship, you come out on the other side a stronger unit, in my opinion. It's a bit of a militaristic sounding statement, but I believe it and I love it, you know. And yeah, frequently I'm out there. I'm like, holy shit, man! We've had some 20-hour days, and you're so tired, and you just want to go home and sleep in a warm bed. But you've also put your body through something and your mind through something really amazing. You know, you've worked really hard and pushed yourself really far because there's no other option. The option is to not even start. But once you start, you're in it. And it's a really cool experience. And there's a lot of fear involved. You get aggravated sometimes, you get afraid, you get bored, a lot of boredom, but
it's like a microcosm of life in a trip.
It kind of is. Yeah. You know, the one thing, you have a lot of things to worry about when you're on a trip like that, but one of them isn't the rest of your life. It's just that moment. Who cares what's happening at the coffee shop, what's happening on TV? None of it matters. And it's nice, you know.
This morning presuming that these come out sequentially, this morning we're talking with Alex, and he brought up this observation that art and culture come out of suffering, that in kind of what you're describing, in these moments where everybody has to band together and express something, whatever it is, that we get this creativity and we get this energy. It sounds a little bit like, actually a lot, like even a mountaineering expedition with 2 or 4 or whatever members will draw something like that, where it's in the, whether it's intentional or unexpected or, you know, casual suffering that's involved with climbing such huge distances and putting yourself through such extreme conditions, that you get something bigger out of it. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a trust in yourself. You know, there's a reliance on what you're really all about. I guess maybe, you know, you're learning your gut, you know, and you're learning what's really important, and it's really just right here, right now, your body. You know, the rest of life is not really relevant because it's not happening right now. And it's a really beautiful experience. You know. And there's a bit of an adrenaline thing as well, of course.
Well, if life wasn't enjoyable, I would have been.
That's right, of course.
I wonder, you know, it's interesting, just good advice. It's interesting to kind of have this thought to put you on the spot. So like on Instagram, you're Alpine Rhymes.
Yeah.
Because you get up to peaks and you write about it.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in reading a poem of yours.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I really love to just get up there and
the pictures you bring back and you post are beautiful. And we're going to talk about magazines and all this kind of stuff moving forward. But
I have a good time. The rhyming thing, I kind of just fell into. I don't frequently like write poetry at home or anything like that, but I was like, this is a fun little ditty that I thought of while I'm on my way up, and I just decided to keep it up. It always used to be about like, rise to the peak, you'll find what you seek. It was always very mountain focused, and lately I've been working on like just poems. It doesn't really have to be about perseverance or the trip, but the one that I think is my favorite is actually the most recent, which I really love. And it's a photo here of a beautiful valley in the Siffler Wilderness area, which is kind of northeast of Lake Louise, way out in the backcountry. And on a side note, that's the spot where they're reintroducing the bison into Banff National Park, because there haven't been any bison in Banff National Park since the early 1900s, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So they're reintroducing.
Sounds like a big project.
It's a big project. I didn't see any of them. They're still under wraps. But so what I wrote here was, in time you'll know that what was said for me and you. Fear is not for us, she told me. Fear is not what's true. And though it took a time and half to digest the things I heard, it built a nest upon my heart, each branch a sacred word. Yeah, I kind of like it.
Alpine rhymes.
Yeah, alpine rhymes. So now, I have a lot of time, obviously, when I'm trudging up a massive hill to the peak of something. And most of the time, you're not thinking about anything. You actually can't, because you're just working too hard.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I like to just start to think about these things, And in this day and age, my phone lasts for 2 days if I have it on airplane mode, and I'll just tick something down while I'm trudging around.
My phone has decided to give up on me. It lasts less than 3 hours. If I have 2 apps simultaneously, it crashes. Apple has told me that the iPhone 6 is no longer a valid device.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It seems like it should be.
Forced obsolescence right there. So frustrating.
As Kyle's been noting, I whine a lot about the corporate patriarchy and all this kind of stuff. But no, it's interesting too. There's an acronym I came around that fear is false evidence of anything real. It's an interesting one in the context of what you were talking about before you started hiking, which is the type of fear where it prevents you from even starting, and I think that is a theme that frightens off so many of us from even entertaining the first creative thought. And we feel like we just gotta just exist. And I don't know, there's something more to life, I think.
I think we all have our things still where fear probably prevents us from doing things. And I certainly do, thankfully, mountains just aren't one of them as much, because I have a community to support me. But in terms of, stepping down as a manager at Phil and Sebastian, I've kind of wanted to stop doing it for a while now. I still put my all into it while I was there, but I was tired, but I was kind of afraid. I was afraid. I was afraid to change my lifestyle, afraid to not have my people, not visit every day, and kind of afraid to work harder to get something new. And I think that's a big one. We get into our rut and we're comfortable, not necessarily happy, but we don't really want to put in the effort to do something different because it may or may not fail. And I'm still afraid to fail, of course. I don't want to fail in the mountains, obviously, because you die. But
well, apparently not.
Well, sure, you don't die. I guess it's. I don't think of turning back as a failure most of the time. But I had to have my bases pretty solid before I finally decided to step down as managing. And even still, I'm going to a whole new role that is new for me and new for the company. And I'm like, shit, can I even do this? Like, am I good enough? Am I educated enough? Am I whatever enough? And it's like, yeah, man, just give it a shot. Give it your all. And that's that. Even in the, with the interview process for this job, it was quite extensive. First, I had to go and just have a casual conversation with them. And they said like, hey, we don't even know if we can afford this or what we want, but we like you. Are you interested? I said like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'm interested in this job that does or does not exist. They said, okay, great. We're going to send you a personality test. So then I did this personality test, and it's from a company here in town, and they ask you a series of questions, and it wasn't as long as I thought it would be. I was expecting like a Briggs-Myers thing or Myers-Briggs thing that is like, the complex ones take like 2 hours, 3 hours to fill out. This one took 20 minutes. It was on my iPhone. It was like a quick little mobile test. I'm like, okay, great. It basically asked me what I prefer out of these statements, which is better, which is worse. What do I trust more? What do I trust less? And I said, okay, I don't see how this is really getting to the bottom of who I am, but okay. And then it gave me a color. Like, you are this color. I said, okay, cool.
What color were you?
I'm a red. I'm 3/4 red and 1/4 yellow.
Fascinating.
So I'm primarily a red.
A dark orange.
Yeah, I don't think you get to mix the colors though. I think you're just red yellow.
Okay.
So I took this test and they contacted me and said like, wow, we're really happy with your test results.
Oh wow.
I said, okay, great. They said so the test was also to see if I align with their set of values. So I think this company, I can't remember what they're called right now. I think they also help you define your values as a company. And then they cater a test to that set of values to see how people align with that. So there's no right or wrong answers. They just want to know if you really align with their vision. So yeah, I took this test and they called me and they said like, wow, this is great. I said, okay, you're red, yellow. And they said, we'd love to have a formal interview with you now. And we want to talk with you. But first, here's the job description and here's an assignment for you. So it's three questions that I had to figure out. So I'm going to read some of these questions just briefly here because I thought they were really interesting.
This is where we need a mic for Kyle and we could all take a turn answering them.
Yeah.
And seeing like how blue and green I actually am.
Yeah, right? These aren't the personality questions. These are the interview questions. So the first question is, please tell us how you would differentiate a community events plan from a community engagement plan.
That's a lot of
so do you want me to?
That's
a lot of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, shit, this is so corporate. I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And at the interview, I told them this all felt really corporate to me and they laughed. They're like, we don't think of ourselves as corporate at all. I was like, I've been working in kitchens and behind coffee bars.
Yeah.
This is uber corporate to me.
Yeah.
I would die in a real office. So I made a big spiel about that. I talked about how an events plan is, well, I made it about mountains. I said an events plan is the peaks, that you are reveling on top of, but the community engagement plan is the valley. When you get back down to the valley and you meet with your family, like that's the warmth. That's the process. That's the home base. How can you make the home base better? The events are the events. But if the home base isn't good, nobody's going to go up the mountain or up to the event. They don't care about it. So that's what we're really going to try and work on. So that was a big one.
That's a great answer. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I had to talk about mountains. So the next one was, this one's a little longer. Basically, they kind of talk about what they're struggling with, how they have a strong community, but they're kind of in small pockets and disconnected hubs. They talk about how their coworkers are interested in community events like yoga and coffee and cocktails, etc. But at the time of the event, very few people actually show up. They akin it to throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And then they have big events, really large, ornate Christmas parties and elaborate things, but actually very few people from the space actually come. It's mostly just people in the community, friends and family and, media and whatever, because they really do an amazing events thing there. So they said, based on the information, what components of a community engagement strategy would you propose to move us from here to there? What components of a community engagement strategy?
Wow.
Holy shit. I was like, okay. And then the last, they talked a little bit more about operations. They said, imagine yourself walking through the commons. What components of a community operations strategy would you propose to make our space and customer service work for us in terms of community engagement? That was the easiest for me to answer because that's more about the operations. I was like, okay, I'm going to imagine walking through this space and just be like, okay, this needs to be lighter. We need to move a desk here, whatever. That was the easiest. But so I probably spent like 5 or 6 hours working on these because I really wanted to impress them. And I was, concerned about this. I was like, oh my God, I need to look up what a strategy is, and and I talked with one of my friends. She said, plans and strategies are different. Like, what? She said, a plan is more short-term and a strategy is more long-term. And strategies have definitive things inside the strategy. You need to ask the questions and then you need to, hone in on which ones are actually the important questions. Then you need to make an action plan and then you need to realize that action plan and then you need to evaluate after. I was like, oh my God, I'm in trouble, So I finally just kind of answered the way that I answer now. Because I said, this is me right now. This is my level of comprehension. And they were really happy with it. So it worked out well, and I laughed at the interview because they said, we wanted to make you pretty uncomfortable with these questions. And I was like, well, it worked. And they said, and yeah, we didn't really know, like, totally what we were asking.
No, of course not.
And I was like, okay, like even they were like, yeah, let's see what happens by asking these questions. But anyways, it was a great talk with them. We talked for almost 2 hours, and they called me today and said, hey,
let's do this.
I don't remember what the initial question was. I went off on a tangent, I think, but yeah, my apologies. But,
no, it doesn't matter. It's fascinating. I think, both as an insight into your character that you would, spend time research it, but then still try to tailor it back to how you want to comprehend it. I mean, I remember when I was 17, I think I applied for a job at a movie theater and I failed the psychological exam. They gave me one of those
psychological exam at a movie theater.
Yeah, they gave me like a behavioral test question, and apparently I failed.
Okay,
because like I was, I considered myself a big movie buff my whole life and all this kind of shit, and then I finally needed a real just a job, and I applied at a Cineplex Odeon in Richmond Hill or somewhere, and it seemed pretty straightforward because, I'm a dude, I need money, I'm good at movies, just give me this goddamn job already. And the person at the time, and this is, 17, so, it was like 1995, whatever. It was a heck of a long time before this modern social test.
Yeah.
So I went into a room and I had to write one of those, I can't remember if it was multiple choice or whatever.
Scantron, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a Scantron. Yeah, like a number 2 pencil or something.
If they had a Scantron machine, I'd be very impressed.
And then I didn't even get a call back. So something on there proved that either I think I spent a lot of energy trying to answer the way I thought they wanted me to answer. Those complex things.
Yeah.
And ever since then, or maybe just in general, I've been really shit at all of them.
That's so funny.
And it was put into light as my amazing wife, when we started dating, she can pass all of those because she's an exceptionally straightforward person. And however she was raised, pro or con or whatever, the one thing that is an incredible part of her is that she's just like, yeah, well, kind of like what you're talking about. It's like, okay, well, I know you want here, but this is
what I got.
This is just what I got. So, if you like it, great. If not, great. Fuck off. Let's just move on.
Then it's not right for either of us.
Yeah.
And they were very adamant to me when I took this test. Like, don't answer what you think we want you to answer. Do not. All right. Cool.
I'm trying to learn that now after hitting the wall so many goddamn times. But
it's difficult.
It's
difficult.
This idea that we have to impress everyone around us to get something is a fascinating poison. I think it's mixed up too much with an obscure idea of morality that we're trying to be good to other people, but what we're being good for. I don't know what the semantic twist is. But
I think if we want to get, new agey or what everybody says now, is if you can't be good to yourself, how can you possibly be good to other people?
Right.
And part of that is just being, true to yourself, if you will, but a lot of it is, I've boiled it down to just being direct with people, which I, of course, struggle to do because I am big time a people pleaser and I want people to like me and, I make a job out of it. But I also if you're not being real with yourself, then you're just going to be pretending all the time and feeling like shit deep down. And
this is why I think I'm learning, there are artists that are happy. There are artists that are miserable. There are people who make 7-8 figure incomes that are happy. There are some that are miserable. This personal perspective of how they approach themselves is such a complex issue where even what I'm doing now in my current iteration of myself, there's a lot of things that I could focus on that would make anybody miserable.
Of course.
And then there's all these things that are happening that I think when people hear about it, they're jealous of because they're like, well, how can you go out? How do you have a podcast right now? I'm like, I don't know.
It just
Kyle
works
appeared
out
in my life and he's lifting me up.
Thanks, Kyle.
With his arms of gold.
That's right.
How do I curate the walls? Well, I talked to Jacquôt and we built some shows and all of a sudden Jacque's like, why aren't you just doing this? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. Let's just do it. There's so much work that goes into before that for us to be able to have those conversations. That's for sure. But, I remember you referred me to talk to, at the time, Josie to get my first show.
Yeah.
And then while the show's up, a photographer fella came up to me and asked, he was just incredulous. He was like, how did you get a solo show? Whoa. And then I had to be the flippant kind of prick. I was like, well, I asked for it. I can give you all the numbers and you can ask. It's just a weird thing. I mean, there's a lot of life that happens to be able to ask for sure. But if I'm learning anything now, it's like just
ask.
It's not about knowing anything.
Yeah, or anyone sometimes. Like sure, like you can get to a end goal faster by knowing people, but sometimes you might waste a lot of time trying to navigate those pathways.
Politics.
Yeah. And all you do is like, hey, I wouldn't mind putting a show up. Is that cool? Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Step one.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. It can be that simple.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Yeah. It's, there's so many things that we do to block ourselves that we don't even realize. I've probably got 1,000 of them, and all it takes is for you to be like, hold on, who's stopping me?
Yeah.
Nobody, and am I harming anybody by doing this thing? Nope. Is society going to look down on me? Probably not. Okay, let's do it then. And the other thing I think is to put something in perspective. This is a bit of an offshoot, but I spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that I was only a barista or only a cafe manager. I'm 33 now, and I was like, is it okay for me to be managing a coffee shop at 33? Well, who cares? Number one. And number two, nobody else cares really. And it's only you. It's not just a coffee shop. It's a place of community. It's a place of food and beverage. It's honestly, there's plenty of 40-year-old restaurant managers out there. So why is this any different? But you can do that in all aspects of your life. I never went to post-secondary school. I just started working in restaurants. And sometimes I think, well, all my friends went to college and did this and this and this, but who cares? It doesn't matter. And I'm about to start a corporate job, and I didn't go to post-secondary education.
In your face.
Yeah.
No, I think I've been doing that, treading that path too. And one of the ones recently that came up is, we've had this winter in October, and if you wake up that one morning when it snowed like 2 feet, we met and it came down. And if your initial intuition is, oh shit, it's snowing so much, versus it's snowing so much. Semantics, tone. It's fascinating how that changes everything.
Yeah.
And all of this sort of weight we put on ourselves about the valuations that other people have on us, like you said, they're total bullshit. Even if they exist, that's what they care.
That's their problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, you almost died twice on a mountain because you don't give a shit what people think about you being on mountains.
Yeah. I want to die on the mountain. No, I don't. I don't want to die on the mountain. But that's my choice to make.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of time left, but one of the things that I'm going to be pushing you, hopefully we'll stay friends, even though I don't get to see you every day. It's kind of a frightening concept too, Jacquôt, is you gotta become a mountaineer proper, dude.
Yeah, that's the next step.
I mean, does that even matter, getting a license in that stuff?
Well, it does and it doesn't. It's more just for the fact, you don't have to be licensed to take people out to the mountains, but you're going to get a lot more credibility. I do want to work towards my mountain guide certification, and it's going to take a long time. But having that certification just really shows people that what's up, what you're doing. It requires a lot less self-promotion, and guiding companies are going to be a lot more inclined to hire you. It's not an essential, though. It's not an essential, but it's something I would like to do. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully this is the beginning of a journey that includes that.
Yeah.
I think
it'll be a lot of fun wherever it goes. I think regardless of if I ever get the certification or not, at least I got to have a lot of good times along the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just hard to comprehend what's going to happen next, since you're about to start in something fundamentally different than you've been doing for 20, 15 years.
Yeah. I've never not worked in a restaurant since 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun to monitor you.
Yeah. Actually, for 5 months, I worked in a hood deflector factory when I was 18 in the Ogden industrial area.
Oh, well, then, you've been in an industrial environment.
Corporate life, yeah. So,
yeah, I don't know. Any kind of concluding statement? Any projects? Anything fun to share? Or should we just kind of keep an eye out as the commons develops?
let's just see what happens. All I want to say is I'm having a wild ride. I love the ups and downs of life, and I love the crazy shit we all go through, and I have a great time. So that's just enjoy the journey, enjoy the wild ride. I know I'm being stereotypical, but just love life, man. But no, just it's all wild. But
it's amazing how it boils down to simple things, man.
Yeah.
All these adages that I used to throw out when I was a kid, they're like, oh my God.
Now they're actually real.
They're all right. Yeah. Should have just been positive instead of being such a snotty, cynical. I know.
Better late than never.
Yeah.
You know,
Can always restart.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah, it's working so far for me, I think.
Good.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
As I stumbled this morning, I don't know what the musical intro is, but it might still be Mallory.
Oh, great.
But I also just received a song from Handmade, so we'll see if that's usurping. I don't know.
We'll see what happens.
I haven't even seen Morgan in a super long time.
It's been a while. It's been a minute, yeah.
So hopefully when she releases a full EP, we can have her on here too. I should actually just now make a note of getting everybody from the different iterations of Phil and Sebastian's Mission one at a time.
It's a good idea.
They're all interesting people.
They're good people. Yeah,
man. Good hiring practices on your part.
Yeah, I'm not about hiring duds, that's for sure. You know, they're either going to be awesome or they're going to go out in a ball of flame. You know,
But it's going to be because they have personality.
That's exactly right. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, Thanks very much, dude.
Great. Thanks to Media Lab YYC.